happy Gaur Purnima, which I think will be tomorrow. Thank you very much to the Academy for giving me always your association and the opportunity to speak on Krishna Katha and Gaur Leela also. Today, we want to concentrate on Antya Leela. It is too vast a subject for us to take in a short time. So I propose that we spend just a few minutes understanding the nature of Antya Leela, and then we can dive into any of the chapters of Antya Leela. There's one specific chapter that comes to mind that I wanted to share with everyone, and perhaps that would be a good understanding of the mood in Antya Leela. Actually, it is stated very nicely that when someone cooks maybe a pot of rice, you can just take one morsel of rice from that pot, and you can actually taste it. And when you taste it, from that taste, you come to understand what is the taste of the whole pot of rice. So it is stated actually that if one wants to understand Bhagavatam, one wants to understand Chaitanya Charitamrita, we can take one chapter and dive into it. And the flavor of the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita and Srimad Bhagavatam will become manifest to us. So bear with me as I take some time to maybe look into that particular chapter. But before that, let us offer our obeisances. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandro Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandro Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Advaita Chandro Jaya, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki. When we hear the word Chaitanya, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya means living force, actually. Srila Prabhupada, in his introduction to Chaitanya Charitamrita, he gives a series of lectures that are captured in the introduction. And there, Srila Prabhupada says very nicely that the word Chaitanya actually means living force. And the word Charitamrita, Charita, sometimes people think it is the story of Krishna, or in this case, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. If you've come from the Southeast Asian part of the world, you know, Charita, for example, in Malay, right, speaks of a story or a pastime. In Sanskrit, Charita has a slightly different but very significant meaning. Charita means character. Charita means character. Amrita means immortal. So it's Chaitanya, living force. Charita means character. And Amrita means immortal. Srila Prabhupada says, a table cannot move because it doesn't possess living force. Living entities can move because we possess living force. But that living force in us is dependent on the supreme living force. And it is a supreme living force that has given this living force in us some ability to move and be active. So, the living force is present in all of us, but our condition is not Amrita. We will never be immortal as long as we have this sharir. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is non-different from Krishna. And as you must have heard from the esteemed speakers yesterday and the day before, you would know that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu cannot be considered as one of us. Prabhupada says very clearly in Sastras that he is Krishna himself. He is the supreme living entity. And as such, he will never come under the cloud of illusion or Maya. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this earth simply to do one thing, to preach Krishna Bhakti. We must be clear about that. Love of God, love of Krishna. In other words, he is Krishna himself, teaching the living entities the proper way to approach Krishna. Prabhupada says he's like a teacher, When a teacher wants to see a student and he's teaching the student, but he sees that the student is not doing his homework or he's not learning his lesson very well, he's doing it poorly, what does the teacher do? The teacher takes up a pencil, he stands next to the student at the board, the blackboard, and then he says, do it like this. And then he writes A, he writes B, and he writes C. From this, one should not foolishly think that the teacher is learning ABC. No, the teacher is not learning ABC, but the teacher has to come to the level of the student to start from ABC. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu may appear in the guise of a devotee, but we should not foolishly think, Srila Prabhupada says, that he's an ordinary human being. He's not. He will always be God, and he's not different from Krishna. In Prabhupada Lilamrita, there's an episode where Prabhupada wanted to initiate 2 or 3 devotees. So they came upstairs to see Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada asked them some questions to assess their suitability. At one point, Srila Prabhupada asked an important question. So who is Krishna? And they said, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prabhupada smiled, that's good. Who is Gauranga Mahaprabhu? Who's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? And the devotee said, he is an incarnation of Krishna. Prabhupada smiled and said, no, he is Krishna. He is Krishna. So we should be clear on the last day of hearing about these beautiful pastimes of Mahaprabhu, that Mahaprabhu and Krishna are non-different. But Mahaprabhu is a merciful manifestation of Krishna because he has come to teach us ABC in the guise of a devotee. Chaitanya Charitamrita is actually divided into 3 parts, and they are known as Leelas. Leela means pastimes. So you would have heard on the first day some understanding and in-depth analysis and beautiful pastimes of Adi Leela. Adi Leela is the early period of Lord Chaitanya's life. And then after that, you would have heard yesterday from none other than Vishnu Chaitanya Prabhu, you would have heard Madhya Leela. And Madhya Leela is the middle period of Mahaprabhu's time. And today, we want to concentrate on Antya Leela. Antya Leela means the final episode or the final period. Murari Gupta, who was a physician and a great devotee of the Lord, his writings composed the basis of Adi Leela. And later on, Swarup Damodar, who was the secretary to Mahaprabhu, his diary became the basis for all the details of Madhya Leela and Antya Leela also. Antya Leela is actually concerning the last 18 years of Mahaprabhu's life. It is the last 18 years of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's presence in this world, only 18 years. And it almost exclusively takes place, right, in Jagannath Puri, in around the vicinity of the famous Jagannath temple. The Lord, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, he resided there, and he was very often in semi-seclusion. He was not traveling and preaching. And in those final years, there are almost 19 chapters in Antya Leela, and they are very confidential in nature because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for example, would have deep discussions on Krishna conscious philosophy and love of Godhead. He met Rupa Goswami, second meeting with Rupa Goswami, and he dived so deep into love of God. In Antya Leela, Mahaprabhu also chastised Junior Haridas because Junior Haridas had actually spent a little time inadvertently, right, in the company of a woman. And just to show us the standard that Mahaprabhu had, he actually chastised Junior Haridas and he forbade him to be in the company of all the devotees. In another chapter, the glories of Haridas Thakur, not Junior Haridas, the glories of Haridas Thakur, who is known as the Namacharya, designated by Gauranga Mahaprabhu, is actually spoken about. And towards the end of Antya Leela, before Gauranga Mahaprabhu left this world, Haridas Thakur became ill. And when Gopinath Acharya wanted to see him one day, he went to see Haridas Thakur because he was wondering why Haridas Thakur had not come to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he saw Haridas Thakur was lying down and his body did not appear to be doing well. So Gopinath Acharya asked Haridas Thakur, Haridas, what is wrong with you? And Haridas Thakur said, I am now afflicted by disease. Gopinath Acharya said, what disease are you suffering from? And Haridas Thakur said, the disease of not being able to complete chanting my rounds for the pleasure of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. That was the glorification of Haridas Thakur. So you will see in Antya Leela that there was specific time that Gauranga Mahaprabhu spent with devotees. He had loving dealings, for example, in Antya Leela between himself and Jagannath Pandit. He chastised, for example, Gopinath Pattanayaka, but he did that out of mercy. He actually gave beautiful instructions, and then those instructions were taken by Ramananda Rai and given to Pradyumna Mishra. So you can see in Antya Leela, the dealings of the Lord were not with the masses. They were actually very much in a secluded, confidential way of discussing very high esoteric philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Raghunath Das Goswami, for example, had a wonderful meeting with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And so did Vallabha Bhatta Prabhu, who would later become Vallabha Acharya. And he also became a disciple of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So like this, there were very wonderful pastimes where Mahaprabhu spent time with devotees. In the last 2 or 3 chapters of Antya Leela, the devotees had to spend more time with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because as he wounded his pastimes in this world, Chaitanya Charitamrita describes how the ecstatic symptoms of love of God for Krishna, it grew and grew in Mahaprabhu. And in fact, his perpetual and ever-increasing religious and spiritual ecstasies were gloriously described in the eyewitness accounts of Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj as he heard it from Raghunath Das Goswami, and Raghunath Das Goswami heard it from Swarup Das Goswami. So you can see how all the very, very confidential pastime of the Lord, how he exhibited great symptoms of love of Godhead, they actually described in Antya Leela. The author of this great classic, because we are winding our time down today on this beautiful topic, his name is Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And he was born at the beginning of the 16th century. And he was a disciple of Raghunath Das Goswami, who was one of the 6 Goswami followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He himself was so old when he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, but he wrote it because he was inspired and he was endowed and he was empowered by Raghunath Das Goswami, who heard from Swarup Goswami, who heard from Sanatan Goswami about all the wonderful pastimes of Mahaprabhu, and then he related it. So towards the end of Antya Leela, the author, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj, he writes actually in the beginning and in the end. He says that I'm very old. He was very old. He was touching 100 actually. And yet, despite his elderly age, he's begging Krishna, he's begging Gauranga Mahaprabhu for mercy to be able to discharge this service. And this is the mood of a great devotee of the Lord. And that is why Chaitanya Charitamrita is so wonderful. It is actually a study of the character, which is immortal, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the living force of all of us. That is the essence of Chaitanya Charitamrita, the supreme living force and his character. And one of the greatest part of his character is the nectar of his pastimes. That is why very nicely in Antya Leela, there is a chapter known as chapter 8. And in chapter 8 of Antya Leela, which today we want to spend some time, that morsel of rice that we want to take to taste, it is entitled Ramachandra Puri criticizes the Lord, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ramachandra Puri criticizes the Lord. Tam vande Krishna Chaitanyam Ramachandra Puri Bhaya Laukika Harata Swamyo Bhikshanam Samakochaya. Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj offers in the first part of this beautiful episode. He says, "Let me offer my respectful obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who reduced his eating due to fear of criticism of Ramachandra Puri." What an amazing pastime. Why did Mahaprabhu reduce his eating? Was he in fear of this character known as Ramchandra Puri? Who was Ramchandra Puri? Who was he to cause Mahaprabhu to reduce his eating? All glories to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the incarnation of the ocean of mercy, who showed us by his charita, by his character, how to handle criticisms in this world. And it's such a practical thing. All of us gathered today, and there are 119 of us, all of us gathered today, we all will face criticisms. And in the Krishna conscious world, sometimes if we are not careful, we will also criticize. How did Mahaprabhu handle criticisms? And why do criticisms come in our heart? And why they block our path of bhakti? And how we can actually reduce our progress in Krishna consciousness if we are not careful and when we criticize. In this episode, one time there was a sannyasi and his name was Ramachandra Puri. At that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was actually in Jagannath Puri. And there he performed his various pastimes in waves of love for Krishna with all the devotees. One day, Ramachandra Puri, he came to see his godbrother. And his godbrother was Paramananda Puri. And he came to see him, and he also saw Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Paramananda Puri got up when he saw Ramachandra Puri, and he offered obeisances at the feet of Ramachandra Puri, and Ramachandra Puri strongly embraced him. Now, some background is needed. Ramachandra Puri was the disciple of a very great acharya in our line of Vaishnava, of Krishna consciousness, and he is known as Madhavendra Puri. So, Paramananda Puri and Ramachandra Puri and Ishwar Puri, they were all disciples of Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Puri, you must understand, initiated Ishwar Puri. Ishwar Puri is the initiating spiritual master of none other than Gauranga Mahaprabhu. So when Gauranga Mahaprabhu saw, right, when he met Paramananda Puri, he would offer obeisances to him because his spiritual master's god brother was Paramananda Puri. Similarly, when Ramchandra Puri came, he offered obeisances to him. Even though the Lord was the supreme personality of Godhead, look at his charita. He was prepared out of etiquette to offer obeisances to Ramchandra Puri. Prabhupada also writes in the purport of text 8 of Antilila chapter 8 that the word Puri actually denotes, right, a sannyasi in the renounced order. And Mahaprabhu showed us the mood, that anytime we see a sannyasi, we should always be prepared to offer respectful obeisances. So then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Paramananda Puri, and Ramchandra Puri, they were talking about Krishna for some time. Bodhayantaha parasparam. And then what happened was another great devotee of the Lord, Jagadananda Pandit. Okay, Jagadananda Pandit came and he met Mahaprabhu, and then he extended an invitation to Ramchandra Puri. He said, Ramchandra Puri, please, I have some wonderful remnants of Mahaprasad and it's coming from Jagannath Puri. I will get a large quantity and I will bring it for distribution. You please take it. Paramananda Prabhu, you please take it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you also please take it. So what happened was, Ramchandra Puri said, all right, bring it. So Ramchandra Puri was offered Mahaprasad and he ate very well. He ate very well. Now, after he ate, he wanted to find fault with who? With Jagadananda Pandit, who brought him prasadam. He wanted to find fault with him. So what did he do? He finished his meal and then he said, my dear Jagadananda Pandit, you please listen to me. Now it's your turn to sit down and you must eat the food that is left. Now, to a devotee, they would think that this is a nice gesture of a devotee, right? We've just eaten, now he wants me to eat. But no one knew that the nature of Ramchandra Puri was to find fault. So what did he do was, with great eagerness, Ramchandra Puri seated Jagadananda Pandit and he personally served him prasadam. When he finished, Ramchandra Puri said, no, 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 eat some more. And he encouraged him again, please eat, please eat, please eat. Now, I'm sure among you devotees, when you all sit down for prasadam, there'll always be one or two devotees who will come and say, Prabhu, some more, Mataji, some more. And even if you say no, they will put some more. It's out of love. But Ramchandra Puri's mood was different. He fed Jagadananda Pandit very well. As a sannyasi, he fed him very well. And the moment Jagadananda Pandit had finished eating, he washed his hands and mouth. Ramchandra Puri, in front of everyone assembled, began criticizing him openly. He said, feeding a sannyasi too much will break his regulated principles. When a sannyasi eats too much, his renunciation is destroyed. This Jagadananda Pandit has eaten more than what he should eat as a sannyasi. And therefore, actually, he has no control over his senses. Just see. So Antya Leela chapter 8 tells us that Ramchandra Puri would first induce someone to eat more than necessary. And after inducing the person, when the person innocently ate, he would then criticize him. Now, this is not unusual because Ramchandra Puri had that nature. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj in that chapter tells us, once long time even before this, Ramachandra Puri was given the opportunity to serve his spiritual master Madhavendra Puri along with his god brother Ishwar Puri. Right? So the two disciples, Ishwar Puri, Ramchandra Puri, they were serving Madhavendra Puri towards his end days. He was at the last stage of his life. And Ramchandra Puri came there and he stayed and tried to serve him. Ishwar Puri served Madhavendra Puri so wonderfully. He hardly spoke. He just served his spiritual master. He did menial service, even cleaning up after his spiritual master. But Ramchandra Puri was so foolish that when Madhavendra Puri was in the last stages of his life, he was going into devotional ecstasy. He would chant the holy name of Krishna. And sometimes because of love of God, he would cry and he would be in the mood of what we call separation. So he would say, oh my Lord, I am so unfortunate. I did not get your shelter in Mathura. This is how Madhavendra Puri would express his separation and deep love. But Ramchandra Puri was so foolish that he fearlessly dared to instruct his spiritual master. You know what he said when Madhavendra Puri said this? He said, my dear spiritual master, if you are so much in transcendental bliss, you should not be crying and lamenting. No, you should be dhiraha. You should know that in everyone's heart, we should only be remembering Brahman, the impersonal form of the Lord. Why are you crying? When Madhavendra Puri heard this instruction from his disciple, which was so completely off from our scriptures, which was so asastric, because it is the mood of separation from the Lord, which is the higher bhav, and Ramchandra Puri and Madhavendra Puri gave us this. He gave us this. He was so upset that he told Ramchandra Puri, get out, you sinful rascal. How can you speak about love for Krishna in that way? Prabhupada in the purport says, because Ramchandra Puri was critical by nature, he could not understand his spiritual master. He could not understand the transcendental ecstasy of separation. Madhavendra Puri's lamentation was not ordinary, but Ramchandra Puri was not sufficiently expert. So this is a very important point. When we criticize and find fault with someone, we do not realize that our transcendental knowledge actually is deficient. That is why we are criticizing. When we have a critical mood, Krishna does not reveal to us the true understanding of spiritual life. Rather, that the ability to understand is taken away by Krishna because he's very upset when we actually criticize his devotee. So therefore, Ramchandra Puri, he did not understand that he was not serving his spiritual master. So Madhavendra Puri then told him, Krishna, he prayed to Krishna. Madhavendra Puri said, oh Krishna, I could not reach you. I'm very unqualified in the last stages of my life. I'm dying in my unhappiness. And now this rascal, who is supposed to be my disciple, he has come to give me more pain. And so he banished Ramchandra Puri. He said, please leave this place. Don't show your face to me. If I die seeing your face, I will not achieve the destination of my life. In saying that way, then Ramchandra Puri, he thought, my spiritual master does not understand what is real philosophy. So therefore, I will leave. And so, denounced by his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri left. Ramchandra Puri left. Now, when he left, in text 26 of Antya Leela, it is very nicely stated by Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj that because of his offense of being critical, of criticizing, of finding fault, even with his spiritual master, something happened in the heart of Ramchandra Puri. Gradually, material desires appeared in his heart. This material desire in Bhagavatam is known as vasana. And in the purport of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada says, when you criticize someone, when you find fault with devotees, the symptom of what will happen to your devotional service is that gradually material desires that you thought you had given up, they will come into your heart. And one of the symptoms of material desire is dry, speculative knowledge. Instead of performing service for Krishna, you will sit down like Ramchandra Puri did, and you will just talk about philosophy, but you never do anything. That is why charita, the mark of a character of a person, is in his service. It is in his realization. Ramchandra Puri did not serve, but criticize his spiritual master. But Ishwar Puri was the opposite. Ishwar Puri, Chaitanya Charitamrita says, gained the favor and blessing of his spiritual master because he just served him with full love and full faith. That's why it is stated nicely in Shastras, I think Prabhupada quotes in that purport, he quotes Bhakti Sandarbha. In Bhakti Sandarbha, it is nicely stated, Jivan Mukta Api Punar, Yanti Samsara Vasanam, material desires. Yadi Achintya Maha Sattau, Bhagavati Aparadinaha. What does it mean? You can be even liberated in your life. But if you offend the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, you will again fall down in the midst of material desires. And you will just speculate dryly, and you will not have spiritual realization. See the point? And it is stated here, later on, there is another quote Prabhupada gives from Vishnu Bhakti Chandrodaya. He says there, Jivan Mukta Prapadyante, Kwachit Samsara Vasanam, again Vasanam, material desires. Yoginam na vilapyante, Karma bir Bhagavat Paraha. The translation is very important. Even liberated souls sometimes fall down due to material desires. So, the moment we offend devotees, material desires will develop in our heart and we will fall down. Instead of progressing in devotional service, we will fall. But the devotees of the Lord, like Ishwar Puri, who never find fault in anything, who never find that there is any discrepancy in devotional service, what will happen to them? They will always have love of Godhead. They will always have love of Godhead. So this is a very important point. So Ishwar Puri was blessed by Madhavendra Puri. How? He blessed him just before he left this world by giving him love of God. And he blessed him with one boon. He said, because you have served me so nicely, you will become the spiritual master to the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. Can you imagine that? He gave the highest benediction to his disciple because he was not critical by nature. And therefore, Ishwar Puri became the spiritual master of Gauranga Mahaprabhu later on. So this is a very important point for us. Now, because of that background, Ramchandra Puri left, but he did not realize how unfortunate he had become. Material desires developed in him. And so he just wandered around and he came to Jagannath Puri. And when he came to Jagannath Puri, what did he do? He came to see Paramananda Puri. Then he saw Jagannatha Pandit. And true to form in his nature, he fed him and then he criticized him. Now, the moment he criticized him, right, it was so bad, then he left. And the devotees who heard about this, they became very disturbed because there was no certainty to where Ramchandra Puri would take his meal. So nobody could forecast, he's coming to my house or he's going to eat. Sometimes Antya Leela chapter 8 tells us, Jagannath Puri, Ramchandra Puri, he would even walk into a place where all the devotees were seated and having prasadam uninvited. But even though he was uninvited or invited, he was very particular about keeping an account of how other sannyasis and other devotees were taking the meals. Imagine that. He had a large file, a dossier. He would check and watch and see who would take too much, and then he would criticize. Now, Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, if someone wanted to invite Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Antya Leela time, because Mahaprabhu was only in Jagannath Puri, all the devotees who were staying there, they were ecstatic. They would always invite Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu would be invited. And of course, as a guest, I have to pay, right, to buy all this bhoga. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj tells us that actually it cost 320 small conch shells. In those days, that was the currency. If you invited Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for lunch, he would come with two other persons. He would come with Kashish Ishvara, and he would come with Govinda. And together, the host would probably pay out maybe 320 conch shells, small conch shells. Every day, Mahaprabhu would take a meal at different places. If someone was prepared to pay for the meal, the price was fixed at only maybe, something very small, like that amount. Ramchandra Puri realized that Mahaprabhu was moving from house to house. So now what did he do? He started gathering information on Mahaprabhu himself. He wanted to know where he stayed. He wanted to know, is the Lord following the 4 regulative principles? He wanted to know where he was going to go for lunch, how much lunch he would eat. He wanted to find out how long was Mahaprabhu sleeping. Was he sleeping too much? Was he very lazy? And he wanted to know all his movements. In other words, he was tracking Mahaprabhu's charita, right? His character. Because Ramchandra Puri was interested only in finding fault, he could not understand the transcendental qualities of Mahaprabhu at all. That's the problem when we want to find fault with devotees. We just focus on the faults of them, that beautiful transcendental charita of their character eludes us. Everybody can see, Prabhu, he's such a nice devotee, but we can't see it because we are only concentrating on trying to find fault. So this is a very good lesson for us, because Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj said, the transcendental attributes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lost on Ramchandra Puri because his only concern was to find fault. But no matter how hard he looked, he couldn't find anything. It's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It will take a lot for you to find fault with him. So he tried and tried and tried, but he couldn't find anything. And then one day, this is what he did. He looked around and then he said, I have ascertained from whatever that we have found, right? And from what I've heard, that actually Mahaprabhu must be eating too much sweets. He found a fault. And so he said very loudly to all the devotees, how can a person in a renounced order eat so many sweetmeats? Mahaprabhu was renounced order. If one eats sweets, controlling the senses becomes very difficult. In this way, Ramachandra Puri blasphemed Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He blasphemed him. And he blasphemed him not quietly, before everyone. But even after blaspheming him, he regularly would come to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not to take blessings, not to take association, not bodhayantaha parasparam, but to try and find more fault. What did Mahaprabhu do when Ramchandra Puri would come to see him even after criticizing him? It is so nice. In text 46 of this chapter, it is stated that when Mahaprabhu met Ramchandra Puri, he would simply offer respectful obeisances and he would serve him as a god brother of his spiritual master. Ramchandra Puri's business was not that. He would just say, Hare Krishna, and then he would wait to find some fault. Mahaprabhu knew that Ramchandra Puri was criticizing him before everyone. But whenever Ramchandra Puri came to see him, the Lord offered him respect with great attention. This is the charita, which is an amrit, which is immortal, which is very sweet, of Mahaprabhu. See his transcendental dealings. No counteraction. He just was the best. He just was the transcendental Lord, very merciful to him. Now, one day, even after finding that first fault, Ramchandra Puri came in the morning to the house where Mahaprabhu was staying. And he looked around, and suddenly he saw many ants on the floor. He saw ants going around. And the moment he saw ants, he said something to criticize Krishna, Gauranga Mahaprabhu. This is what he said. He said, last night, there must have been sugar candy on the floor. Why? Because ants are wandering around. Where there are ants, there must be sweet. Therefore, I come to understand that this renowned sannyasi Gauranga Mahaprabhu is so attached to such sense gratification that all he wants to do is eat these candy sweets without time, place, without regulation, and without control of his senses. Now, Mahaprabhu had heard these rumors that he was being criticized. He had even heard indirectly that Ramchandra Puri had actually criticized him. But when he heard directly these fanciful accusations, he smiled to himself. He just smiled. Now, in the purport to text 50, Prabhupada makes a very important point for all of us. He says, Ramchandra Puri could find no fault in the character of Mahaprabhu because Mahaprabhu is always transcendental. Prabhupada says, ants are generally found everywhere. And therefore, ants could be crawling in Mahaprabhu's house for any number of reasons. It could be that Mahaprabhu was not eating sweetmeats. And therefore, Prabhupada writes there that when we cannot find fault with someone, what we do is we try to find imaginary faults with them. And that's very dangerous. If you want to see something, you see it, isn't it? If you don't want to see something, you don't see it. So sometimes we find fault which is not there, but we try and find some reason to give the fault. And that's exactly what Ramchandra Puri did. Ants, they travel everywhere. But Ramchandra Puri imagined the fault and he criticized Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by alleging that there were sweetmeats in his room. What did Mahaprabhu do? How did his charita, how did his character react to this? Mahaprabhu turned to Govinda, his secretary, and then he told him, Govinda, from now on, tell everyone who's going to invite me for prasad, I will only accept 1/4 of a pot of Lord Jagannath's prasadam. No more the full pot. Only 1/4 I will take. And I will take 5 gandas worth of vegetables, which is very little actually. He would take more. And then he told Govinda, if you bring me any more than that, or if anyone brings me anything more than that, you will not see me in Jagannath Puri anymore. What a terrible thing. Govinda relayed this message with so much of pain to all the devotees. When the devotees heard all this, they felt like their heads had been struck by the thunderbolts. All the devotees condemned Ramchandra Puri in their hearts. They were saying, how can this sinful man come and do this to the Lord himself? He has taken away our lives. Now that day, a Brahmana extended an invitation to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Govinda then told him that only 1/4 we are going to eat. The Brahmana started hitting his head with his hand in pain and said, alas, alas, why should the Supreme Lord be eating so little food? Mahaprabhu ate only half of the rice and the vegetables. And whatever there was remaining in the house, he took it and gave it to Govinda. In that way, Mahaprabhu and Govinda ate only half the food they needed. And because of this, all the other devotees, they gave up eating. They gave up eating. It's a very important point here for us to remember. You know, sometimes we don't realize that when we criticize other devotees, the pain that we cause to others, or when devotees are very mature and they accept the criticism and they try not to do something, how many others also suffer on that account? Because of Ramchandra Puri's critical nature, of his fault-finding mentality, because he did that to his spiritual master, his vasanas and material desires grew. He became blind and could not understand the transcendental position of Mahaprabhu. And because he spoke so badly and found imaginary faults with Mahaprabhu, Mahaprabhu did not counteract him. Mahaprabhu just accepted it. He just left it that way. And therefore, he didn't feel anything. Because he did not feel anything did not mean that the other devotees did not feel very bad. So then they began to follow Mahaprabhu's instructions, even though they were pained. So Mahaprabhu went to another house, and there he ate only half. And in this way, some days passed in great unhappiness. Mahaprabhu would feel bad, for Govinda or Swarup Damodar or Kashi Ishvara. And he would tell them after that I've only eaten that little, but I'm very full. You go and beg for some alms and fill up your belly. One day, Ramchandra Puri came to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu again. Maybe he came to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he wanted to beg forgiveness for all the things that he had done. Maybe that's why he came, because his heart melted. When Mahaprabhu saw Ramchandra Puri, he embraced him and offered obeisances and worshipped his feet. Ramchandra Puri smiled, and then he spoke to the Lord. He said, "My dear Gauranga Mahaprabhu, I have heard that you are not eating so much. It is not the business of a sannyasi to gratify his senses. He should fill up his belly in some way or other. I've heard now that you have cut your food in half. I see that you're very skinny. I must tell you one thing. Dry renunciation the way you are doing is not the true religion and dharma of a sannyasi." Can you beat it? He now goes on to say, a sannyasi should not eat too much, too little. You were eating too much and too many sweets. Now you're eating too little. You must eat enough to maintain your body, and you must not enjoy your senses either way. Mahaprabhu heard all this, and then he humbly submitted. My dear Ramchandra Puri, I'm just an ignorant boy, and I'm like your disciple. It is my great fortune that you are now instructing me. Mahaprabhu's charita, his character, was so noble that he could have counteracted. Na asya tad pratikurvanti. It is stated so nicely in Bhagavatam 1:1848. When you have time, please look at it. Tiraskritta vipralabdha, shapta shipta hata hapi. Na asya tad pratikurvanti. So these three lines are very important. It is stated there that the devotees of the Lord are never inclined to avenge themselves. Even if people mean harm to them, they may criticize, they may find fault, they may neglect, they may harm you, they can sometimes even blaspheme you, they can defame you. Like Ramchandra Puri, in his criticisms, he was defaming Mahaprabhu. Sometimes they can even kill you, like Shringi Brahmana cursed Parikshit Maharaj to die. But even though devotees are put into positions where they are criticized, na asya tat pratikurvanti, they do not counteract. And Mahaprabhu showed us the nobility of a devotee because he was in the guise of a devotee, if you remember. So he fell at Ramchandra's feet and he said that, please, I am like a poor innocent boy. I am like your disciple. I consider it my great fortune that you are teaching me. When Ramchandra Puri heard that, he got up and he left. And he went around to confirm that Mahaprabhu was eating half as much as usual. See, even then, his heart did not change. The next day, Paramananda Puri and all other devotees approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They set him down, and with great humility and submission, they said, Dear Mahaprabhu, Paramananda Puri said, my god brother Ramchandra Puri, by nature he's a bad critic. If you have given up eating because of his words, what will be the profit, Mahaprabhu? What is the point? It is the nature of Ramchandra Puri that first he lets one eat as much as desired, and if he then eats more than necessary, he will criticize him. And he will turn the spotlight with great attention, and he will make him look like a fool. So actually, he will induce one to eat more, and then he will directly criticize him. So please, you are not at fault at all. It is his business. He makes it his business to inquire about how others are eating and how they are conducting their daily affairs. And then Paramanand Puri said something to the Lord. He quoted Sastra. He said, and he quoted a very nice verse that Krishna would speak to Uddhava in 11:28:1. It's a nice verse. Paraswabhava karmani na prashamse na garhayet vishwam ekadmakam pashyan prakritya purushena cha. What a nice point. This is what he said. So the translation that Krishna gives to Uddhava is very nice. One should see that because of the meeting of material nature and the living entity, the universe is acting uniformly. Hear carefully. Because of the meeting of material nature as well as the living entity, the universe is acting uniformly. Therefore, Krishna tells Uddhava, one should neither praise nor criticize the characteristics and the activities of others. Very important point. So now Paramanand Puri has brought up this verse as Sastra. Then he tells Mahaprabhu, of the two rules, one should not praise nor criticize. Why is that important? Because too much praise can also lead to development of false ego. And too much criticism is very offensive by nature. Sometimes we praise someone because we want to gain their favor, and it is dangerous. Therefore, Bhagavatam says, we don't need to praise, nor do we need to criticize, but we should serve. But now there's a second part to this rule. Paramanand Puri says that of the two rules, one is allowed to abandon the first, but one should always follow the second very strictly. In other words, one should never criticize, but it is all right if one praises. Such a nice point. So there are two injunctions given by Bhagavatam. One is called Purva Viddhi, that one should not praise, and the other is called Paraviddhi, that is, one should not criticize. And of the two, Paraviddhi is not allowed, but Purva Viddhi is all right. So between the two rules, Paramanand Puri told Mahaprabhu that it is more important to see good qualities in devotees, but it is never important for devotees to see bad qualities. So, please, Mahaprabhu, why have you given up eating? Based on the criticism of Ramchandra Puri. That was the point that Paramanand Puri was saying. Why have you given that up? Please accept invitations as before. This is the request from all of us. Please do so. Please do so. Our hearts are so unhappy to see you this way. Now, let us hear what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had to say. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then replied, why are all of you angry with Ramchandra Puri? Why? Why are all of you so upset? What has he said that is wrong? He is expounding the principles, the natural principles of sannyas life. Why are you accusing him? Actually, what he said is correct. For a sannyasi to indulge in satisfying the tongue is a great offense. That's all he said. The duty of a sannyasi is to eat only as much as needed by the body to keep body and soul together. So you see, Mahaprabhu did not find any fault in Ramchandra Puri. It's the same thing he did in Madhya Leela with Amog, the son-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. The Bhattacharya invited Mahaprabhu, if you recall, to have sumptuous feast. And Amoga, the envious son-in-law who criticized Mahaprabhu, said, how can a sannyasi, Mahaprabhu, eat so much? Same thing as Ramchandra Puri. And when the devotees were very upset, when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told Mahaprabhu, I want to kill Amog, what did Mahaprabhu tell him? The same thing he said here. He said, what has Amog spoken which is wrong? He has said that the sannyasi should not eat so much. So I just am doing what he's saying. I don't find any problems. But when they requested very fervently, still he did not eat a full meal. He did not. He just kept eating half, just half, just half. And then one day, what happened was this. Ramchandra Puri then finally decided that he will leave Jagannath Puri. He decided he will leave. Just one day he did that. And when he did that, he never came back. Why? Because his material desires increased and increased and increased to the point where instead of remembering Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he gradually developed an impersonalist form of understanding Krishna. And he had so much material desires in his heart. The material desires finally caused him to leave the company of devotees. This is a very important thing. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj ends the session, this wonderful chapter, by saying an important thing. Mahaprabhu actually descended in this world, and this is the gist of Antya Leela. Mahaprabhu descended into this world to give happiness to the devotees. Mahaprabhu came in Kali Yuga to give us happiness by chanting his name, by following his pastimes, by relishing his kirtans. And he behaved in whatever way was fit for time, place, and circumstances. When he became a sannyasi, he was ready to take criticisms because he was renounced. The first thing we should understand about others criticizing us is whether we want to become attached to that criticism and keep it in our heart and meditate on it, and it becomes part of us, and then we criticize someone with that criticism. Or do we want to renounce that criticism because it doesn't belong to us? It is not our property anymore. One time, a man came to hear the Buddha speaking in an assembly, and everyone's heart melted when they heard the wisdom of the Buddha, except this man. He criticized Buddha when he finished his talk, and then he asked Buddha to respond to his criticism. He wanted him to respond or to fight back. The Buddha looked at him and said something very nice. He said, when someone wants to gift someone else with property, if that person doesn't want to receive that gift, to whom does the gift belong to? To whom does the property belong to? The man said, if I wanted to give something to someone, then if the person receives it, it's his property. If the person doesn't want to receive it, then it is my property. And the Buddha said that I renounce your criticism. Therefore, it is not my property. It is yours. Keep it with you and walk with it. And the Buddha left. Mahaprabhu taught us a very important thing. In Antya Leela, he was in a renunciation mood. And he showed us that the most important renunciation we should have is the renunciation of our pride. It's very easy for people to criticize us, and when we hear that, our pride is pricked. And we think, no, I'm not like that. And then we go on to say, I'm like this, I'm like this, I'm like that. I've done this, I've done that, I've done this, I'm not that. And it's very easy for us to become very proud of who we are. But we don't realize that pride is the start of our downfall in spiritual life. Because from pride will come envy. And from envy, there will arise anger. So Mahaprabhu, by treating and not counteracting Ramchandra Puri, by speaking with him in sweet words, by just accepting what he said, and just maintaining a polite distance from him, Mahaprabhu showed us how he accepted Ramchandra Puri as a master, how he delivered himself as a servant. But he didn't just speak, just saying, I am a servant. His charita was such that he actually behaved with humility. He actually behaved with humility. So it's very important actually here for us to understand that in this Leela, Mahaprabhu showed us a very important thing. He showed us that his character is full of nectar. Very important. In the last few lines of Antya Leela, in the shloka 101, Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj says this very important point. He says, Chaitanya Charitra Yena Amritera Pura. Chaitanya Charitra Yena Amritera Pura. Chaitanya Charitra means the character of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yena means as if. Amrita Pura means filled with nectar. Pura, full of nectar. Shunite means to hear. Shravane means to the ear. Mane, to the mind. Lagaye, we feel. And Madhura is pleasing. So when you put everything together, Chaitanya Charitra Yena Amritera Pura. And then Shunite Shravane Mane Lagaya Madhura. And the meaning is very nice. The character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is full of nectar. Hearing about it is always pleasing to the ear and to the mind. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not consider the offenses of Ramachandra Puri. He did not consider them. The Lord considered him his spiritual master. He was older. But through his character, Mahaprabhu instructed everyone what happens when you offend the spiritual master. Ramchandra Puri offended Madhavendra Puri, and therefore material desires grew in his heart. And Mahaprabhu showed us through this episode what happens when material desires grow in our heart. It's very important. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj says, Chaitanya Charitra Like, Shuna Eka Mane, Anayase Pave Prema, Sri Krishna Charane. I write about the character of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, O readers. Please hear with attention, for then you will be able to receive ecstatic love for the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna. What a beautiful point. And therefore, to conclude, one very important point that we must remember is a nice shloka from Srimad Bhagavatam. It's in the 3rd canto, 2nd chapter, 23rd shloka, 3-23. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigjam shayapad yayat api asadvihi lebe gatim datri uchitam tato anyam kamva dayalum sharanam rajema. The translation is very beautiful. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful? How shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to a she-demon Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast? In other words, Shukadev Goswami, right, through Bhagavatam, Maitreya and Vidura through Bhagavatam, they are remembering how merciful Krishna is. Just like today, we remember how merciful Mahaprabhu is. Krishna was so merciful that Putana came to kill him. But in order to do that, she had to disguise herself and pretend to be a gopi. So she had to pretend to have that mood of a gopi. Even the pretense was hypocritical, but Krishna accepted it anyway because she fed him milk. It may have been poison, but he said she at least tried, and she passed through the whole house of Nanda Maharaj. And all the gopis thought she was a beautiful gopi. That's how well she acted her part. And Guru Maharaj used to tell me, after reading this verse, even if you pretend to be a devotee, continue with devotional service. One day Krishna's mercy will descend on you. Many of us may have started our devotional service pretending to be devotees, but eventually devotees, by their association, if we are not critical, if we find, we accept that we are lowly and we need to learn, we will grow in devotional service. We will. And Prabhupada writes in the purport of 323, something that is directly connected to Antya Leela chapter 8 today. He says, here is an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord, even to his enemy. And Prabhupada writes, it is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of a doubtful character. A noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just like one accepts nectar from the stalk of poison. Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother. The Lord will accept the least qualification of the living entity, and he awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character, Charita. Therefore, who but the Lord can be our ultimate shelter? Therefore, remembering Chaitanya Mahaprabhu today, just before Gaur Purnima, who but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who but Gauranga Mahaprabhu can be so kind? If he was kind enough to give shelter and tolerate and give respect to Ramchandra Puri, then how much more we must learn from Gauranga Mahaprabhu about how we should tolerate the criticisms that come to us, and how at the same time we should be careful never to criticize others. Jai Gauranga Mahaprabhu ki, Jai, glories of Antya Leela ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Gurudev ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandan. Thank you very much for having me over. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Your Grace. Thank you so much for the wonderful and enlightening discourse on Antya Leela and on the Lord's mercy. Hema Mataji's internet is down, so I have to come in to replace.
That's fine. That's fine.
So, Prabhu, thank you once again, Prabhu. And we can take a few questions from the audience if there is any questions. So, Prabhus and Matajis, feel free to leave your questions on the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I think everybody understood the class, Prabhu.
I hope so.
It's Katha, right?
Yeah, it's Katha. It's Katha. You know.
His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu ki jai.
Mataji, you're very kind. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Okay, I think we don't have any questions today, Your Grace. So with that, thank you once again from all of us. We greatly appreciate your association, Your Grace, and wishing you an auspicious Gaur Purnima festival tomorrow. Thank you.
Same here. Wishing you all a wonderful Gaur Purnima. And please, the Academy has done so much for you. You have had 3 days of listening to wonderful pastimes. Please value this. This is so nice. And you will never get this chance, you know. And make this one life count. Mahaprabhu came for us. He's given us this chance. Chant, dance, be happy, take plenty of prasadam. Don't worry about anyone criticizing you. Eat as much as you can. Be purified, but do not find fault with anyone. Just look to ourselves. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu.
Prabhu,
This
Hare
is Vishnu
Krishna.
Chaitanya here, your servant.
Vishnu Chaitanya
Prabhu,
Prabhu.
can you please inform the devotees what to be done tomorrow for Gaur Purnima?
What to be done tomorrow? As in our mood, Prabhu, what we should be doing?
Morning, getting up in the morning for Mangalarti and the whole thing.
Yeah. I think tomorrow morning, waking up for Mangalarti is a must because that would be really pleasing to the Lord. Wake up early in the morning. There is fasting, of course, tomorrow till dusk, you know. I mean, till the time when the moon is rising. Please observe the fast in a very loving and serious manner. If you feel that, you know, the fasting is very difficult, don't worry. Chant more rounds. Chanting Krishna's names on the day when Mahaprabhu is about to come will please Mahaprabhu very much. Don't forget how he came. He came at the point, you know, when everyone was chanting the names of Hari. Tomorrow, if you can, do services. Somewhere, anywhere, whatever service you can do, please continue that service. Service is a great way to keep the mind engaged. And if you don't know where to go, what to do, or whatever station of life you may be in, take out Chaitanya Charitamrita and read the pastime of the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Listen to kirtans. And if you have the program where you come together, please perform nice service, dance for the pleasure of Mahaprabhu. But the prayer to Mahaprabhu is that please always keep me engaged at your lotus service. Because Mahaprabhu really loves service. He loves chanting. And he loves all of us to be happy in devotional service. Because as Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj said, he descended to give happiness to his devotees. I hope that's fine, Vishnu Chaitanya Prabhu.
Perfect, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. I will take leave now. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. So, Prabhus and Mataji, since Prabhu has already mentioned about what to do next, I will skip that part and a very quick announcement, the same announcement. So we are going to have our 8 weeks beginner class coming Sunday. So please do pass the word around to your friends and family. And if any of you have any questions, kindly reach out to me or any of the tech team. With that, I would like to thank all of you for joining us for the past 3 days. We really appreciate your presence and your time, for making time to come and listen to the Katha. I hope you have all benefited from the session. So, and Bhagavad Gita Academy would like to wish all of you a very auspicious Gaur Purnima festival tomorrow. As mentioned by Prabhu, do a fast if you can till dusk, moonrise or sunset tomorrow. And if you can, please do visit the local temple for any services. With that note, thank you so much. All glories to their Lordship Sri Lakshmi Narayana, all glories to Sri Radha Madhava Ashtasakis, all glories to Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, all glories to Sri Sri Gauranitai, all glories to the Sambardaya Acharyas, all glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees, Thank you, Prabhus and Matajis. Hare Krishna.